Hello everyone, welcome back to our gathering. Thank you for being here with us today as we embark on a new story. Let's get started. There was a time when I believed my life was flawless. It was a time when my wife, Leela, and I had constructed a lovely abode in a peaceful suburb. Our life together was a vision of serenity, coordinating coffee mugs, Friday movie nights, and a mutual passion for gardening. People in our circle often praised our fortune, portraying us as the epitome of a perfect couple. Yet those commendations, though pleasing, now feel empty to me. The reality is, perfection is but a mirage, and I was oblivious to the fissures that had started to emerge in our bond. Initially, I failed to perceive them, or perhaps I chose not to. Lee was engaged in marketing, a profession that demanded frequent business travels, often leaving me to oversee matters at home solo. I had complete faith in her, as any husband would. After all, she was my partner and my confidant. I found contentment in my uncomplicated role overseeing a supply chain team, and I admired her drive. She was sociable, the heart of every gathering while Lee was outgoing. I preferred to remain in the background, believing that our differences complemented each other. However, in the months leading up to a significant discovery, a shift began to occur gradually. Lee started coming home later and later, initially attributing it to the demands of her projects. Yet subtle signs started appearing: her attachment to her phone, secretive giggles at messages she wouldn't share with me. When questioned, she dismissed it as work-related or conversations with friends. I wanted to trust her, but the occasional doubt would creep into my thoughts. One night, as I got up for a glass of water, I noticed the faint glow of Lee's phone screen in the living room. Initially thinking she had forgotten it, curiosity began to take hold. Feeling conflicted, I knew it was wrong to invade her privacy, yet it seemed as though fate had guided me to this pivotal moment. With a moment of hesitation, I picked up her phone and unlocked it. She had always trusted me with her passcode, never once considering that I would violate her trust. Convinced that I was only checking to ensure her well-being, I delved into her messages, only to discover something that shattered both her trust in me and my trust in myself. The first message I came across was from someone named David. "Can't stop thinking about you. Last night was amazing." My heart skipped a beat, my hand trembled, and the world around me momentarily faded. The words echoed in my mind, each repetition sending a shiver down my spine. The gravity of the situation sank in as I grappled with the implications of that message. Swirling in a whirlpool of confusion, I desperately scrolled through the conversation, desperately hoping for a benign explanation. Unfortunately, the messages only reinforced my feelings of betrayal. Late-night rendezvous, affectionate emojis, and shared inside jokes, all of which excluded me. The pieces of the puzzle. They spoke of something deeper, more intimate. It wasn't just an affair. It was an emotional connection I wasn't even aware of. I put the phone back exactly where I had found it, stood there for a moment, and stared out the window. The weight of the discovery sank in slowly. A storm was building inside me, one I couldn't ignore. I had questions, so many questions. Who was Evan? How long had this been going on? Why had Lila lied to my face for so long? I spent hours that night sitting in the living room, replaying every moment of our marriage. I was trying to piece together what had gone wrong. The way she'd stopped kissing me goodbye in the mornings, the new lingerie I never saw her wear, the sudden gym memberships, the girls' nights out. Things that never seemed out of place at the time now seemed like red flags. It all made sense now. But what hurt the most wasn't the affair itself. It was the realization that I had been blind to it all. I had trusted her, given her. My loyalty was rewarded with betrayal when the sun rose, stirring a shift in my emotions from pain to a potent anger. It wasn't just any anger. It was a quiet, controlled fury. I wasn't only upset with Leela for betraying me. I was also frustrated with myself for being too naive, too trusting, and too weak. The next morning, with Leela cheerfully offering pancakes for breakfast, she seemed oblivious to the storm brewing within me. As I gazed at her, I finally saw her for who she was, the woman I had loved in error, the woman I had shared a life with. In that moment, I realized she underestimated me, regarding me as inconsequential and easily dismissed. Unaware of my capabilities, she had committed her first mistake. She had no knowledge of my past self, but I was about to remind her. Understanding that revenge required patience, planning, and precision, I knew I needed concrete evidence of her betrayal. Before taking any further action, I avoided confronting her with mere suspicions, opting to wait until I had concrete proof. That morning, I put on a facade of normalcy by smiling, eating the pancakes she made, kissing her goodbye, and going to work. Despite my calm exterior, my mind was in turmoil, replaying the image of Leela and Evan laughing together. Suppressing my emotions, I made the decision to take action. During lunch, I reached out to a private investigator named Dale, who King recommended online. When we met at a coffee shop later that evening, I articulated my concerns about my wife's potential infidelity and requested evidence like photos, texts, and locations. Dale, with a sly grin, assured me of his discretion, stating, "You'll have what you need in no time." The following days dragged on as I observed Lee going about her usual routine, mentioning an upcoming business trip casually. As she spoke about leaving town, and I felt a sense of dread, knowing she was likely not yet. 3 days later, Dale phoned Jack. "You were right," he said, a somber tone in his voice. "I've gathered everything, photos, timestamps, the works." They met later that evening in Dale's office. What Dale presented left Jack feeling numb. The evidence pointed to a deeper connection between Leela and Evan than just a fleeting affair. The images of Leela entering the high-end downtown hotel with Evan, the messages they exchanged, and their weekend plans painted a clear picture of something more significant that had been developing over time. As Jack absorbed the information, a shift occurred within him. His sorrow and heartache began to dissipate, replaced by a steely resolve. There were no tears, no outbursts. Instead, a calculated plan started to form in Jack's mind. He believed that every betrayal should come with consequences, and he was determined to ensure that Leela and Evan faced theirs. Unbeknownst to Leela, Jack had orchestrated a plan that was now nearing its climax, and she remained oblivious to the impending turmoil that was about to shatter her world. Everything she believed she had under her control was unraveling right before her eyes. What's more, she remained oblivious to the fact that I was no longer the harmless man she once knew. The aftermath of her business trip was a whirlwind. I observed as she frantically attempted to salvage her career and piece back together the remnants of the life she had recklessly torn apart. Unbeknownst to her, all that she had meticulously built, her career, her social circle, her seemingly flawless marriage, was crumbling due to her own choices. Meanwhile, I remained composed, focused, and resolute. It was a rare moment where I felt fully empowered. The old knave Jack was gone, replaced by someone astute, strategic, and resolved to ensure that those who had crossed him would face consequences. In the days following Leela's return from her trip, a tense silence filled the air. Lee, eager to salvage what remained of her reputation, dedicated herself to mend the damage. Despite her control, all her efforts were futile. The flaws in her facade were becoming more noticeable, catching the attention of those around her. One evening, she returned home from work looking weary and stressed, her usual confidence now replaced by nervous energy that I found somewhat amusing. She hardly spoke to me, clearly consumed by the chaos she had brought upon herself. Breaking the silence, she finally confided in me, admitting, "Jack, I'm truly scared. The situation at work is escalating. HR is investigating the accusations, and rumors are spreading. I don't know how much longer I can maintain this charade." I observed her closely, absorbing each word and gesture. She was undeniably fearful, yet what intrigued me the most was her failure to make the connection. Unaware that it was actually me, her once reliable husband, who had orchestrated everything, from the anonymous HR tip to the incriminating photos and messages. She believed someone else was behind the scheme, someone intent on destroying her. Her life was complex, but the truth was much simpler. Her own decisions had led to her downfall. "You'll get through this, Leela," I reassured her calmly, my voice barely audible. "It's just a misunderstanding." Everything will resolve itself. Though she looked at me with desperation, there was a hint of doubt in her eyes. She wasn't as certain anymore, and for me, that signaled a small victory. It was no longer just about revealing her infidelity. It was about witnessing her come to terms with the consequences of her actions. However, my plan wasn't complete. The next step involved increasing the pressure on Evan, the man who had intruded into my marriage, believing he could have my wife. As he faced the repercussions of his own flaws, including his gambling addiction, debts, and shady dealings, I had a decision to make. Rather than directly confronting him, I contemplated. To ensure he faced consequences without ever discovering who orchestrated his downfall, I discreetly contacted some of his less reputable creditors to inform them about his recent behavior. Without directly threatening him, I relied on the weight of his past actions to exert pressure. Before long, Evan began feeling the repercussions. His demeanor changed noticeably, especially when Lee discussed him. Despite her ongoing concern for him, I sensed she was starting to question whether he was worth the trouble. The burden of his gambling debts, including the relentless calls, threats, and visits, started wearing him down. What added a satisfying twist was witnessing Lilith experiencing the fallout of her deeds. One night, she returned home looking more distressed than ever. "Jack, we need to talk." She paced the living room urgently. "Evan's in trouble. People are after him, making threatening calls." It was a challenge to hide my smirk as I observed the situation unfold. Caught in the turmoil of her affair and professional repercussions, she remained clueless about the reality. Pretending concern, I inquired about the well-being of the person in question. Inside, I relished her distress. Unsure of what lies ahead, she admitted to the crumbling aspects of her life, work, romance, and uncertainty clouding her judgment. This was the moment I realized I had orchestrated the situation to my advantage, manipulating her every step. She perceived herself as a victim, unaware of my carefully laid out plans for her downfall. The pinnacle of my scheme came when I exposed her vulnerabilities to the public. Layla's public image defined her success, and stripping her of that facade would leave her stripped of her identity. Crafting an anonymous email to unveil the truth was the final touch in executing my vengeance. She shared the photos of Leela and Evan, along with excerpts from their texts and a brief message, with all of her closest friends and family. "You all deserve to have the full picture." Soon after, the email quickly spread among the recipients. Within hours, Lila's phone was buzzing nonstop as friends questioned and accused her, and her mother called in tears demanding explanations. Rumors spread like wildfire, leaving Layla feeling powerless for the first time. That evening, she confronted me with a flushed face, filled with anger and humiliation. "Did you do this?" she asked, her voice shaking with emotion. "Did you send those photos and ruin my life?" I stood there calmly and met her eyes. "Why would I do that, Leela?" I responded, my voice steady and low. "I had no idea you were involved with someone else." It was at that moment she realized the gravity of the situation, fear etched in her widened eyes. The truth had finally broken through, leaving the damage irreparable and the walls of deception crumbling around us. "Leela, I can explain." Her voice trembled with desperation as she admitted, "I made a mistake, Jack. A huge mistake." I stopped her with a shake of my head. "No, Leela. You made a choice, and now you have to face the consequences." The sound of her sobs filled the room as she crumbled onto the couch, her face hidden in her hands. But it was already too late. There was no way to redeem her actions, no forgiveness in sight. As Layla's life unraveled, her company let her go for breaching ethical standards. Evan, the final piece of the puzzle, vanished, unable to confront the chaos he helped create. Her once loyal friends distanced themselves, refusing to be associated with her scandal. With no one to turn to, Layla retreated into a state of isolation, her former zest for life extinguished. A mere shadow of her former self, she wandered through the house like a specter haunted by her decisions. And I, filled with indifference, watched it all unfold. The final act arrived in the form of a divorce unlike any other. I wasn't going to let her off the hook. She had taken everything I had worked tirelessly for, and now it was time for me to reclaim what was rightfully mine. After consulting with my attorney, Lauren, every aspect was meticulously addressed, from financial agreements to custody decisions. I entered the lawyer's office and processed the necessary paperwork, ensuring that my best interests were safeguarded and Layla's access to resources limited. This outcome blindsided Layla, who had presumed she held all the power. Yet, as I reflected on the dissolution of my marriage, I recognized a vital lesson. One should never overlook an individual who has reached their breaking point. Observing Layla's struggles to maintain control of her life was strangely gratifying. Witnessing her unravel as she attempted to mend fractured relationships and rectify work mistakes was a spectacle of poetic justice. Her previous facade of perfection crumbled, offering a revealing glimpse into her vulnerability. Her once meticulously styled appearance was now disheveled, her makeup smeared, and the carefully constructed facade of confidence had crumbled. Her previously immaculate clothes now draped on her like a harsh reminder of her tumultuous reality. One evening, as I observed her sitting at the kitchen table, staring blankly at her phone, I knew the moment had arrived. It was time to cut the final tie between us. I had been preparing for this for months, and now I was determined. Without saying a word, I slid the divorce papers across the table. Her eyes widened in a mixture of confusion and disbelief as she looked up at me. What's this?" she asked. "Divorce papers," I said, my voice colder than I had ever intended. "It's over, Layla." Her hands trembled as she picked up the papers, her eyes skimming the words as if unable to believe what they said. "You can't be serious, Jack. Please, can't we discuss this?" she pleaded. "There's nothing to discuss," I replied firmly. "You've made your choices, and now you have to face the consequences." Tears streamed down her cheeks as Layla's tears did not reflect regret for her actions towards me, but rather the sense of loss she felt as her marriage, comfortable life, and illusion of control slipped away. The divorce proceedings were swift and carefully orchestrated. With the help of Lauren, my reliable partner in this process, I ensured that Layla was left with little to her name. Our shared assets had already been moved into my accounts, shielded from her reach. The evidence of her infidelity was undeniable, enabling me to claim the house, savings, and most other assets we had acquired. Meanwhile, Layla found herself in dire straits as she struggled to cope with substantial debts, surviving on minimal unemployment benefits that could scarcely cover her essentials. The scandal had tarnished her professional reputation, making it challenging for her to secure employment in her preferred field, while even the man she had taken such risks for had vanished. Nobody knew his whereabouts, but I had a strong suspicion. He was likely evading the creditors I had informed about. Layla attempted to contact him numerous times, only to be met with silence each time. The man she had trusted to rescue her had abandoned her, leaving her to face the repercussions alone. By the time the divorce was settled, Layla's life had transformed beyond recognition. She had been compelled to relocate to a shabby one-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of town, a stark contrast to her former lifestyle. Her once vibrant social media profiles, showcasing the reveal, extravagant vacations, and lavish events, had fallen silent. Her friends had drifted away, her family seemed distant, and the rumors circulating about her were more prevalent than ever. Despite feeling a twisted sense of satisfaction that she was finally being seen for who she truly was, the day Layla unexpectedly appeared at my doorstep was unexpected. She stood there looking worn out, her eyes bloodshot from crying. She bore no resemblance to the woman I once knew, Jack. Her voice was barely audible as she spoke. "I'm sorry for everything. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. Can we please try again? I'll do anything." As I gazed at her, I realized that for the first time in months, I felt neither anger nor pity nor any emotion at all. The woman before me was not the Layla I had wed. She had vanished, replaced by a person who had deceived me, lied to me, and thought she could escape unscathed. I shook my head slowly. "No, Layla," I declared firmly, my voice resolute. "It's over. You sealed that fate." She crumpled on the porch, weeping uncontrollably, but I did not invite her inside. Quietly shutting the door behind me, I left her to grapple with her shattered heart and ruined aspirations. Walking away without a backward glance, I knew I had made the right choice. She had underestimated me, believing I was incapable of standing up for myself. But I had shown her otherwise. Even the most forgiving individuals have their limits while rebuilding their lives. As those boundaries were breached, their potential was unknown. In the weeks that ensued, I embarked on reconstructing my life. The once bustling household, resonating with the tumult of our union, now fell into silence. Amidst the solitude, I found clarity for the first time in years. The void that once engulfed me dwindled, making way for a tranquil serenity. I began to unearth forgotten aspects of myself, my passion for music, intrigue in woodworking, and the longing to chart my own course in life. No longer merely surviving, I embraced living and relished the sensation. Meanwhile, Layla faced a downward spiral. Tales of her decline spread swiftly, with whispers circulating about the woman who once possessed all but lost everything. Though I refrained from monitoring her, news of her struggles reached me. She grappled to make ends meet, confined to a small, cramped apartment and unable to secure a job in her chosen field. The anguish she inflicted upon me had now become her daily burden. Unexpectedly, a letter arrived one day. It bore the name of Leela. I didn't expect to hear from her again, but there it was, sitting in my mailbox. I opened it and read the letter twice before folding it neatly and placing it in a drawer. Jack, I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, but I need to say this. I'm sorry not just for the affair, but for taking you for granted. You were a good husband, and I threw it all away for something meaningless. I know I can't undo the damage I've caused, but I hope one day you can forgive me. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel satisfaction. I didn't even feel relief. I just felt acceptance. Layla's apology didn't change anything. It didn't erase the pain, the betrayal, or the months of suffering, but it was the closest thing to closure I would ever get. I folded the letter and placed it in the drawer, locking away that chapter of my life for good. I began planning my departure from the town. It wasn't that I hated the place. It was just filled with too many Leela memories, good ones, bad ones, and everything in between. After deciding to distance myself from the shadows of the past, I utilized the resources acquired through the divorce to pursue a fresh start. A small town in the Pacific Northwest, a place I had always dreamed of residing in, became my new home. The clean air and peaceful landscape brought me a sense of tranquility I hadn't felt in years. Embracing this newfound freedom, I secured a job at a local hardware store, engaged in volunteering at a community center, and welcomed a dog into my life. Though not extravagant, this life was authentic and truly mine. While Leela occasionally crossed my mind, I refrained from dwelling on her journey towards happiness and the shackles of her past choices. My existence was now detached from hers, granting me a sense of liberation. Reflecting on my actions, I held no regrets. Leela had underestimated me, presuming me to be too feeble and naive to advocate for myself. However, I had defied her expectations. Every individual, no matter how kind, possesses boundaries, and once those boundaries are transgressed, the future path becomes uncertain. Thank you for watching all the way through. If you like the story, please remember to click the like button. Your support only takes a moment but is incredibly meaningful to us. Don't miss out on our future videos by subscribing to the channel and ringing the notification bell to be one of the first to watch. We'll see you in the next video.